Welcome into the live, my friends. Oops. Welcome into the live, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. This is Steph from Treversence, and today we are going to continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. For those of you who have been here with me as I read this book, we have gone over how this shepherd boy has traveled from Spain over to Africa trying to find this treasure that he's looking for. And all along the way, he has been getting all these lessons, all these life lessons, lessons from an old man, lessons from working in a crystal bar. He has gotten lessons from just ordinary people. And all of those lessons, he has been putting them all together to make his life more meaningful. And that is what I mean when I say, grow where you are planted. Whatever circumstance, that's a little too loud, isn't it? Whatever circumstance you find yourself in, use it to your advantage. Even if it is a bad circumstance, you can always turn it around and make it into something profitable for you. Because everything in life is connected. And as the saying goes in this book, whatever you want in life, the universe will conspire to ensure you have it. Today we are going to continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And we are not too far from the end. So for the next hour, come on in and stay with me as I read this book. Let's begin. Walking along in the silence, he had no regrets. If he died tomorrow, it would be because God was not willing to change the future. He would at least have died after having crossed the strait, after having worked in a crystal shop, and after having known the silence of the desert and Fatima's eyes. He had lived every one of his days intensely since he had left home so long ago. If he died tomorrow, he would already have seen more than other shepherds, and he was proud of that. Suddenly he heard a thundering sound, and he was thrown to the ground by a wind such as he had never known. The area was swirling in dust so intense that it hid the moon from view. Before him was an enormous white horse, rearing over him with a frightening scream. When the blinding dust had settled a bit, the boy trembled at what he saw. Astride the animal was a horseman, dressed completely in black, with a falcon perched on his left shoulder. He wore a turban, and his entire face, except for his eyes, was covered with a black kerchief. He appeared to be a messenger from the desert, but his presence was much more powerful than that of a mere messenger. The strange horseman drew an enormous curved sword from a scabbard mounted on his saddle. The steel of its blade glittered in the light of the moon. "Who dares to read the meaning of a fight of the hawks?" he demanded, so loudly that his words seemed to echo through the 50,000 palm trees of Alphaeum. It is I who dare to do so, said the boy. He was reminded of the image of Santiago Matamoras, mounted on his white horse, with the infidels beneath his hooves. This man looked exactly the same, except that now the roles were reversed. It is I who dare to do so, he repeated, and he lowered his head to receive a blow from the sword. Many lives will be saved because I was able to see through the soul of the world. The sword didn't fall. Instead, the stranger lowered it slowly until the point touched the boy's forehead. It drew a drop of blood. The horseman was completely immobile, as was the boy. It didn't even occur to the boy to flee. In his heart, he felt a strange sense of joy. He was about to die in pursuit of his destiny. And for Fatima, the omens had been true. The omens had been true after all. Here he was, face to face with his enemy, but there was no need to be concerned about dying. The soul of the world awaited him, and he would soon be a part of it. And tomorrow, his enemy would also be a part of that soul. The stranger continued to hold the sword at the boy's forehead. Why did you read the flight of the birds? I read only what the birds wanted to tell me. They wanted to save the oasis. Tomorrow, all of you will die because there are more men at the oasis than you have. The sword remained where it was. Who are you to change what Allah has willed? Allah created the armies, and He also created the hawks. Allah taught me the language of the birds. Everything has been written by the same hand, the boy said, remembering the camel driver's words. The stranger withdrew the sword from the boy's forehead, and the boy felt immensely relieved, but he still couldn't flee. Be careful with your prognostications, said the stranger. When something is written, there is no way to change it. All I saw was an army, said the boy. I didn't see the outcome of the battle. The stranger seemed satisfied with the answer, but he kept the sword in his hand. What is a stranger doing in a strange land? I am following my destiny. It's not something you would understand. The stranger placed his sword in its scabbard, and the boy relaxed. I had to test my courage, the stranger said. Courage is the quality most essential to understanding the language of the world. The boy was surprised. The stranger was speaking of things that very few people knew about. You must not let up, even after having come so far, he continued. You must love the desert, but never trust it completely. Because the desert tests all men. It challenges every step and kills those who become distracted. What he said reminded the boy of the old king. If the warriors come here and your head is still on your shoulders at sunset, come and find me, said the stranger. The same hand that has brandished the sword now held a whip. The horse reared again, raising a cloud of dust. Where do you live? Shouted the boy as the horseman rode away. Hello, guys. Welcome. Thank you so much, James Gip, Winsome, and VH. How are you doing? Welcome into the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Let's continue. You must not let up, even after having come so far, he continued. You must love the desert, but never trust it completely, because the desert tests all men. It challenges every step and kills those who become distracted. What he said reminded the boy of the old king. If the warriors come here and your head is still on your shoulders at sunset, come and find me, said the stranger. The same hand that had brandished the sword now held a whip. The horse reared again, raising a cloud of dust. "Where do you live?" shouted the boy as the horseman rode away. The hand with the whip pointed to the south. The boy had met the alchemist. Next morning, there were 2,000 armed men scattered throughout the palm trees at Alphayoun. Before the sun had reached its high point, 500 tribesmen appeared on the horizon. The mounted troops entered the oasis from the north. It appeared to be a peaceful expedition, but they all carried arms hidden in their robes. When they reached the white tent at the center of Alphayoun, they, they withdrew their skitamars and rifles, and they attacked an empty tent. The men of the oasis surrounded the horsemen from the desert, and within half an hour, all but one of the intruders was dead. The children had been kept at the other side of the grove of palm trees and was nothing of all and saw nothing at all of what happened. The women had remained in their tents, praying for the safekeeping of their husbands, and saw nothing of the battle either. Were it not for the bodies there, there on the ground, it would have appeared to be a normal day at the oasis. Winsome is here. Winsome, do you remember when we had read the Bible and the men were sent out to battle, and only the women and the children, at the end of that battle, only the women and the children were left alive? And Moses instructed them to lead the women and the children to the camp. You remember that, Winsome? Why does this sound so eerily similar to that story in Leviticus? You remember? And when they got back, Moses told them that they had to wash themselves for 7 days. Their swords had to be washed. If they had anything that was wooden that could be burnt, had to be burnt, and anything that was metal had to be washed for 7 days, and it was unclean. But they had brought all the children and the women from the city because they had slain all the men. I don't know, where is Cad? You know, Cad is my brain boxer. Where is she? She would remember that story. This sounds eerily similar to that story. But anyway, we're going to continue. The only tribesman spared was the commander of the battalion. That afternoon, he was brought before the tribal chieftains, who asked him why he had violated the tradition. The commander said that his men had been starving and thirsty, exhausted from many days of battle, and had decided to take the oasis so as to be able to return to the war. The tribal chieftain said that he felt sorry for the tribesmen, but that the tradition was sacred. He condemned the commander to death without honor. Rather than being killed by a blade or a bullet, he was hanged from a dead palm tree, where his body twisted in the desert wind. The tribal chieftain called for the boy and presented him with 50 pieces of gold. He repeated the story about Joseph of Egypt and asked the boy to become the counselor of the oasis. When the sun had set and the first stars made their appearance, the boy started to walk to the south. He eventually sighted a single tent, and a group of Arabs passing by told the boy that it was a place inhabited by genies. But the boy sat down and waited. Not until the moon was high did the alchemist ride into view. He carried 2 dead hawks over his shoulder. "I am here," the boy said. "You shouldn't be here," the alchemist answered. "Or is it your destiny that brings you here? With the wars between the tribes, it's impossible to cross the desert, so I have come here." The alchemist dismounted from his horse and signaled that the boy should enter the tent with him. It was a tent like many at the oasis. The boy looked around for the ovens and other apparatus used in alchemy, but saw none. There were only some books in a pile, a small cooking stove, and the carpets covered with mysterious designs. Sit down. We'll have something to drink and eat these hawks, said the alchemist. The boy suspected that they were the same hawks he had seen on the day before, but he said nothing. The alchemist lighted the fire, and soon a delicious aroma filled the tent. It was better than the scent of the hookahs. Why did you want to see me? The boy asked. Because of the omens, the alchemist answered. The wind told me you would be coming, and that you would need help. It's not I the wind spoke about. It's the other foreigner, the Englishman. He's the one that's looking for you. He has other things to do first, but he's on the right track. He has begun to try to understand the desert. And what about me? When a person really desires something, all the universe conspires to help that person to realize his dream, said the alchemist, echoing the words of the king. The boy understood. Another person was there to help him towards his destiny. So you are going to instruct me? No, you already know all you need to know. I am only going to point you in the direction of your treasure. But there's a tribal war, the boy reiterated. I know what's happening in the desert. I have already found my treasure. I have a camel. I have my money from the crystal shop. And I have 50 gold pieces. In my own country, I would be a rich man. But not but none of that is from the pyramids, said the alchemist. I also have Fatima. She is a treasure greater than anything else I have won. She wasn't found at the pyramids either. They ate in silence. The alchemist opened a bottle and poured a red liquid into the boy's cup. It was the most delicious wine he had ever tasted. Isn't wine prohibited here? The boy asked. It's not what enters men's mouths that's evil, said the alchemist. It's what comes out of their mouths that is. The alchemist was a bit daunting, but as the boy drank the wine, he relaxed. After they finished eating, they sat outside the tent under a moon so brilliant that it made the stars pale. Drink and enjoy yourself, said the alchemist, noticing that the boy was feeling happier. Rest well tonight, as if you were a warrior preparing for combat. Remember that wherever your heart is, there you will find your treasure. You have got to find the treasure so that everything you have learned along the way can make sense. Tomorrow, sell your camel and buy a horse. Camels are treacherous. They walk thousands of paces and never seem to tire. Then suddenly they kneel and die. But horses tire bit by bit. You always know how much you can ask of them, and when it is that they are about to die. Lori, how are you doing, my love? Guys, think about it. Think about your life today. What are you going to buy? A horse or a camel? You hear what the alchemist says? Camels are traitorous. That means you can't trust them. You can trust and believe that your camel is going to take you where you want to go without quitting on you and dying suddenly. He says the camel will walk thousands of miles. And that is letting you believe that he can't tire. Oh, I can do this. I can do this. And he will keep going and going and going and going and going, seeming as though he is never tired. And then suddenly, he will just kneel down and die. On the contrary, a horse will tire bit by bit. And you know what that is telling you? Whatever you have to do, you can't complete everything in one day. You will tumble over and die just like a camel. Take your time and do it bit by bit, because with each step, your destiny becomes closer. Let us continue. Cortian is in the house. How are you doing, my dear Lori? James Gip is in the house, Winsome and VH, and I'm sure there are others who are on the outside listening. Thank you all so much for stopping by. We're going to continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The following night, the boy appeared at the alchemist's tent with his horse. The alchemist was ready, and he mounted his own steed and placed the falcon on his left shoulder. He said to the boy, "Show me where there is life out in the desert. Only those who can see such signs of life are able to find treasure." They began to ride out over the sands, with the moon lighting their way. "I don't know if I'll be able to find life in the desert," the boy thought. "I don't know the desert that well either." He wanted to say so to the alchemist, but he was afraid of the man. They reached the rocky place where the boy had seen the hawks in the sky, but now there was only silence in the wind. "I don't know how to find life in the desert," the boy finally said. "I know that there is life here, but I don't know where to look." "Life attracts life," the alchemist answered. And then the boy understood. He loosened the reins on his horse, who galloped forward over the rocks and sand. The alchemist followed as the boy's horse ran for almost half an hour. They could no longer see the palms of the oasis, only the gigantic moon above them and its silver reflections from the stones on the desert. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, the boy's horse began to slow. "There's life here," the boy said to the alchemist. "I don't know the language of the desert, but my horse knows the language of life." They dismounted, and the alchemist said nothing. Advancing slowly, they searched among the stones. The alchemist stopped abruptly and bent to the ground. There was a hole there among the stones. The alchemist put his hand into the hole, and then his entire arm up to his shoulder. Something was moving there, and the alchemist's eyes, the boy could see only his eyes, squinted with his effort. His arm seemed to be battling with something in the hole. Then, with a motion that startled the boy, he withdrew his arm and leapt to his feet. In his hand, he grasped a snake by the tail. The boy leapt as well, but away from the alchemist. The snake fought frantically, making hissing sounds that shattered the silence of the desert. It was a cobra whose venom could kill a person in minutes. "Watch out for his venom," the boy said. But even though the alchemist had put his hand in the hole and had surely already been bitten, his expression was calm. "The alchemist is 200 years old," the Englishman had told him. He must he must know how to deal with a snake in the desert." The boy watched as his companion went to his horse and withdrew a scimitar. With its blade, he drew a circle in the sand, and then he placed the snake within it. The serpent relaxed immediately. "Not to worry," said the alchemist. "He won't leave the circle. You found life in the desert, the omen that I needed." Why was that so important? Because the pyramids are surrounded by the desert. The boy didn't want to talk about the pyramids. His heart was heavy, and he had been melancholy since the previous night. To continue his search for the treasure meant that he had to abandon Fatima. "I'm going to guide you across the desert," the alchemist said. "I want to stay at the oasis," the boy answered. "I've found Fatima, and as far as I'm concerned, she's worth more than any treasure." "Fatima is a woman of the desert," said the alchemist. "She knows that men have to go away in order to return, and she already has her treasure. It's you. Now she expects that you will find what it is you are looking for." "Well, what if I decide to stay?" "Let me tell you what will happen. You'll be the counselor of the oasis. You have enough gold to buy many sheep and many camels. You'll marry Fatima, and you'll both be happy for a year. You'll learn to love the desert, and you'll get to know every one of the 50,000 palms. You'll watch them as they grow, demonstrating how the world is always changing. And you'll get better and better at understanding omens, because the desert is the best teacher there is. Yard Foods, how are you doing, my sister? Good to see you as always, my love. Sometime during the second year, you'll remember about the treasure. The omens will begin insistently to speak of it, and you try to ignore them. You'll use your knowledge for the welfare of the oasis and its inhabitants. The tribal chieftains will appreciate what you do, and your camels will bring you wealth and power. During the third year, the omens will continue to speak of your treasure and your destiny. You'll walk around night after night at the oasis, and Fatima will be unhappy because she'll feel it was she who interrupted your quest. But you will love her, and she'll return your love. You'll remember that she never asked you to stay, because a woman of the desert knows that she must wait for her man. So you won't blame her, but many times you'll walk the sands of the desert thinking that maybe you could have left, that you could have trusted more in your love for Fatima. Because what kept you at the oasis was your own fear that you might never come back. Wow, that right there was powerful. Don't let fear keep you in the same place year after year. That's what I got from that paragraph right there. Don't allow fear to keep you from your destiny. At that point, the omens will tell you that your treasure is buried forever. Then, sometime before the fourth year, the omens will abandon you because you have stopped listening to them. The tribal chieftains will see that, and you'll be dismissed from your position as counselor. But by then, you'll be a rich merchant with many camels and a great deal of merchandise. You'll spend the rest of your days knowing that you didn't pursue your destiny and that now it's too late. You must understand that love never keeps a man from pursuing his destiny. If he abandons that pursuit, it's because it wasn't true love, the love that speaks the language of the world. The alchemist erased the circle in the sand, and the snake slithered away among the rocks. The boy remembered the crystal merchant who had always wanted to go to Mecca, and the Englishman in the search of the alchemist. He thought of the woman who had trusted in the desert, and he looked out over the desert that had brought him to the woman he loved. They mounted their horses, and this time it was the man who followed the alchemist back to the oasis. The wind brought the sounds of the oasis to them, and the boy tried to hear Fatima's voice. But that night, as he had watched the cobra within the circle, the strange horseman with the falcon on his shoulder had spoken of love and treasure, of the women of the desert and of his destiny. I'm going with you, the boy said, and he immediately felt peace in his heart. We leave tomorrow before sunrise, was the alchemist's only response. The boy spent a sleepless night. 2 hours before dawn, he woke one of the boys who slept in his tent and asked him to show him where Fatima lived. They went to her tent, and the boy gave his friend enough gold to buy a sheep. Then he asked his friend to go into the tent where Fatima was sleeping and to awake her and tell her that he was waiting outside. The young Arab did as he was told and was given enough gold to buy yet another sheep. Now leave us alone, said the boy to the young Arab. The Arab returned to his tent to sleep, proud to have helped the counselor of the oasis and happy at having enough money to buy himself some sheep. Fatima appeared at the entrance to the tent. The two walked out among the palms. The boy knew that it was a violation of the tradition, but that didn't matter to him now. Guys, you all remember we had just read the book Spare by Prince Harry. Guys, guys, for those of you who have been following me, I want you to understand that everything is really connected. Remember, we read Harry's book, was the last book we wrote, we read before we read the Twice in a Lifetime book. And in Harry's book, you see how Harry seemed to have violated the tradition by marrying the woman he loved rather than the woman that the palace approved of. And you see all the problems that has come with that. That's what happens when you follow your destiny, but do not allow it to stop you. That's the message here. Do not allow the negativity around you to stop you from thriving, from moving forward, for doing what you must do for you. There are always going to be haters. There are always going to be people who, because of tradition or because of their own personal convictions, they are going to not approve of what you are doing. But don't let it stop you. Here is the boy. He has found what he considers to be his destiny with Fatima. Remember, he said to her in a previous chapter, I knew I loved you before I met you. The wind had brought your scent and the sound of your voice to me long ago. So when I saw your face, when I heard your voice, when I smelt you, I had heard that voice before and I had smelt that scent before and I had seen your face before in my dreams. I had seen your face. So I knew what you looked like when I met you. Remember, it was the same thing with Harry. Y'all remember? It was the same thing. Like, remember when he was describing how when he started communicating with his wife on with the woman who would become his wife on Instagram, how he was just so suddenly he was so struck by her work, by her beauty, by her compassion. And then after it was made public that they were dating, how everybody started to see her differently. Everybody started to say, "Oh, she was controlling, and she was all these things that he could never see." You're always going to find that, people. My friends, my travelers, my visitors, everybody, Cortia and Laurie, Yard Foods, everybody else in the chat. You're always going to find that. The person you love might be that one person who the rest of the world hates. But follow your heart. Love what you do. Even if it doesn't appear in the form of a person, it could be your profession. It could be just a passion of yours. Do not allow it to escape from you. Because your destiny is determined by you. You alone can achieve your destiny for you. Nobody else can achieve your destiny for you. And if you don't act on it fast enough, you are going to end up being old and worried about why didn't you? Your life, the end of your life is going to be filled with what if. What if I had? What if I had taken that step and gone to school to do XYZ? What if I had, say, started that YouTube channel? What if I had married that guy and had those children? What if? You don't want the end of your life to be filled with what if. So go ahead and do whatever it is that your heart desires. We are going to continue. Jojo, Joseph, say good morning. Jojo, what's up? How are you doing, my love? Welcome. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you, my dear. What time is it? Oh, it's after 5. Let's continue. Fatima appeared at the entrance to the tent. The two walked out among the palms. The boy knew that it was a violation of the tradition, but that didn't matter to him now. I'm going away, he said, and I want you to know that I'm coming back. I love you because. He paused. Don't say anything, Fatima interrupted. One is love. One is loved because one is loved. No reason is needed for loving. But the boy continued, I had a dream, and I met with a king. I sold crystal and crossed the desert. And because the tribes declare war, I went to the well seeking the alchemist. So I love you because the entire universe conspired to help me find you. The two embraced. It was the first time either had touched the other. I'll be back, the boy said. Before this, I always looked to the desert with longing, said Fatima. Now it will be with hope. My father went away one day, but he returned to my mother, and he has always come back since then. They said nothing else. They walked a bit farther among the palms, and then the boy left her at the entrance to her tent. I'll return, just as your father came back to your mother, he said. He saw that Fatima's eyes were filled with tears. You are crying? I'm a woman of the desert, she said, averting her face. But above all, I'm a woman. Fatima was back to her tent, and when daylight came, she went out to do the chores she had done for years. But everything had changed. The boy was no longer at the oasis, and the oasis would never again have the same meaning it had had only yesterday. It would no longer be a place with 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells, where the pilgrims arrived, relieved at the end of their long journey. From that day on, the oasis would be an empty place for her. From that day on, it was the desert that would be important. She would look to it every day and would try to guess which star the boy was following in search of his treasure. She would have to send her kisses on the wind, hoping that the wind would touch the boy's face and would tell him that she was alive, that she was waiting for him, a woman awaiting a courageous man in search of his treasure. From that day on, the desert would represent only one thing to her, the hope for his return. Aridata, what's up, sis? How are you doing? So good to see you. It's been a hot minute, sis. It's been a hot minute. How have you been? It's good to see you as always, my love. Here I am reading The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I hope you all are enjoying the reading, guys, as much as I am enjoying bringing it to you. This book is filled with so many life lessons and love and hope. Let's continue. Don't think about what you have left behind, the alchemist said to the boy as they began to ride across the sands of the desert. Everything is written in the soul of the world, and there it will stay forever. Men dream more about coming home than about leaving, the boy said. He was already reaccustomed to desert silence. If what one finds is made of pure matter, it will never spoil, and one can always come back. If what you have found was only a moment of light, like the explosion of a star, you would find nothing on your return. The man was speaking the language of the alchemy, but the boy knew that he was referring to Fatima. It was difficult not to think about what he had left behind. The desert, with its endless monotony, put him to dreaming. The boy could still see the palm trees, the wells, and the face of the woman he loved. He could see the Englishman at his experiments and the camel driver who was a teacher without realizing it. Maybe the alchemist has never been in love, the boy thought. The alchemist rode in front with the falcon on his shoulder. The bird knew the language of the desert well, and whenever they stopped, he flew off in search of game. On the first day, he returned with a rabbit, and on the second, with 2 birds. At night, they spread their sleeping gear and kept their fires hidden. The desert nights were cold and were becoming darker and darker as the phases of the moon passed. They went on for a week, speaking only of the precautions they needed to follow in order to avoid the battles between the tribes. The war continued, and at times the wind carried the sweet, sickly smell of blood. Battles had been fought nearby, and the wind reminded the boy that there was the language of the omens, always ready to show him what his eyes had failed to observe. On the seventh day, the alchemist decided to make camp earlier than usual. The falcon flew off to find game, and the alchemist offered him offered his water container to the boy. "You are almost at the end of your journey," said the alchemist. "I congratulate you for having pursued your destiny. "And you have told me nothing along the way," said the boy. "I thought you were going to teach me some of the things you know. A while ago, I rode through the desert with a man who had books on alchemy, but I wasn't able to read anything about them." "There is only one way to learn," the alchemist answered. "It's through action. Everything you need to know, you have learned through your journey. You need to learn only one thing more." The boy wanted to know what that was, but the alchemist was searching the horizon, looking for the falcon. "Why are you called the alchemist?" "Because that's what I am." And what went wrong when other alchemists tried to make gold and were unable to do so? "They were looking only for gold," his companion answered. "They were seeking the treasure of their destiny without wanting actually to live out the destiny." "What it is that I still need to know?" the boy asked. But the alchemist continued to look at the horizon, searching for the falcon. And finally, the falcon returned with his meal. They dug a hole and lit their fire in it, so that the light of the flames would not be seen. "I'm an alchemist simply because I'm an alchemist," he said, as he prepared the meal. "I learned the science from my grandfather, who learned from his father, and so on, back to the creation of the world. In those times, the masterwork would be written simply on an emerald. But men began to reject simple things and to write tracts, interpretations, and philosophical studies. They also began to feel that they knew a better way than others had. Yet the emerald tablet is still alive today." What was written on the emerald tablet? The boy wanted to know. The alchemist began to draw in the sand and completed his drawings in less than 5 minutes. As he drew, the boy thought of the old king and the plaza where they had met that day. It seemed as if it had taken place years and years ago. "This is what was written on the emerald tablet," said the alchemist when he had finished. The boy tried to read what was written in the sand. "It's a code," said the boy, a bit disappointed. "It looks like what I saw in the Englishman's book." "No," the alchemist answered. "It's like the flight of those two hawks. It can't be understood by reason alone. The emerald tablet is a direct passage to the soul of the world." The wise men understood that this natural world is only an image and a copy of paradise. The existence of this world is simply a guarantee that there exists a world that is perfect. God created the world so that, through its visible objects, men could understand his spiritual teachings and the marvels of his wisdom. That's what I mean by action. "Should I understand the emerald tablet?" the boy asked. "Perhaps, if you are in a laboratory of alchemy, this would be the right time to study the best way to understand the emerald tablet. But you are in the desert, so immerse yourself in it. The desert will give you an understanding of the world. In fact, anything on the face of the earth will do that. You don't even have to understand the desert. All you have to do is contemplate a simple grain of sand, and you will see in it all the marvels of creation." "How do I immerse myself in the desert?" Listen to your heart. It knows all things because it came from the soul of the world, and it will one day return here. They crossed the desert for another 2 days in silence. The alchemists had become much more cautious because they were approaching the area where the most violent battles were being waged. As they moved along, the boy tried to listen to his heart. It was not easy to do. In earlier times, his heart had always been ready to tell its story, but lately it wasn't true. There had been times when his heart spent hours telling of its sadness, and at other times it became so emotional over the desert sunrise that the boy had to hide his tears. His heart beat fastest. His heart beat fastest when it spoke to the boy of treasure, and more slowly when the boy stared entranced at the endless horizons of the desert. But his heart was never quiet, even when the boy and the alchemist had fallen into silence. Why do we have to listen to our hearts? The boy asked when they had made camp that day. Because wherever your heart is, that is where you will find your treasure. But my heart is agitated, the boy said. It has its dreams. It gets emotional, and it's because and it becomes passionate over a woman of the desert. It asks things of me, and it keeps me from sleeping many nights when I'm thinking about her. AG, what's up? Well, that's good. Your heart is alive. Keep listening to what it has to say. Welcome into the live, AG. How are you doing, my love? So good to see you as always. I hope you're having a fabulous Thursday. Thank you so much for coming into the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Let's continue. During the next 3 days, the two travelers passed by a number of armed tribesmen and saw others on the horizon. The boy's heart began to speak of fear. It told him stories it had heard from the soul of the world, stories of men who sought to find their treasure and never succeeded. Sometimes it frightened the boy with the idea that he might not find his treasure, or that he might die there in the desert. At other times, it told the boy that it was satisfied, it had found love and riches. My heart is a traitor, the boy said to the alchemist when they had passed the rest of the horses. It doesn't want me to go on. That makes sense, the alchemist answered. Naturally, it's afraid that, in pursuit of your dream, you might lose everything you have won. Well, then, why should I listen to my heart? Because you will never again be able to keep it quiet. Even if you pretend not to have heard what it tells you, it will always be there inside you, repeating to you what you are thinking about life and about the world. You mean I should listen, even if it's treasonous? Treason is a blow that comes unexpectedly. If you know your heart well, it will never be able to do that to you, because you'll know its dreams and wishes and will know how to deal with them. You will never be able to escape from your heart. So it's better to listen to what it has to say. That way, you'll never have to fear an unanticipated blow. The boy continued to listen to his heart as they crossed the desert. He came to understand its dodges and tricks, and to accept it as it was. He lost his fear and forgot about his need to go back to the oasis, because one afternoon his heart told him that it was happy. Even though I complain sometimes, it said, it's because I'm the heart of a person, and people's hearts are that way. People are afraid to pursue their most important dreams because they feel that they don't deserve them, or that they'll be unable to achieve them. We, their hearts, become fearful just thinking of loved ones who go away forever, or of moments that could have been good but weren't, or of treasures that might have been found but were forever hidden in the sands. Because when these things happen, we suffer terribly. Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much, my darling. My heart is afraid that it will have to suffer. The boy told the alchemist one night as they looked up at the moonlit sky. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second of the search is a second's encounter with God and with eternity. Every second of the search is an encounter with God, the boy told his heart. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, every day has been luminous because I've known that every hour was a part of the dream that would never end. When I had been truly searching for my treasure, I've discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not taken the courage to search for my treasure. And you know what the boy is talking about, guys? Had he never left his small village to become a shepherd boy, roaming around, had he never sold his sheep and moved, had he never taken that step to go across the straits into Africa, he would never have found the treasure of being in the company of the alchemist, of finding Fatima, of realizing that he can do other things. Remember, he worked in the crystal shop. Did he ever expect that he was going to work in the crystal shop? No. Because before then, he was thinking, when he was in Spain, he was thinking that he was going to be a shepherd boy all his life, because that's how he was taught. That's how he was raised. That's what happened in his culture. He was expected to be a shepherd boy, and that's what he had become. His family had tried to make him become a priest. He didn't want to be a priest. He decided to be a shepherd. But then he started to stop and think about, wow, these sheep. I've been leading these sheep for years and years, year after year. They don't complain. They don't talk back. All they want me to give them is food and water. That's all they ask of me. And as long as I lead them to food and water, they are fine. Remember when he had said, these sheep, if I should take my sword and start slaying them one by one, they wouldn't realize it until I've almost slain all of them. That's how sheep are. They just go along. And a lot of us are sheep in our own rights. We just go along with whatever. We are not like other animals who will stop and think. You ever see like a dog? If you have 3 dogs and you put clothes on one dog, I don't want to be morbid here. I don't want to say cut the dog or whatever. Right. So I'm going to say, if you start putting clothes on one dog, you will notice that the other dogs eventually would come to you for clothes. It would appear that they, in their minds, they have determined that, well, if one dog is getting clothes, then all of us need to get clothes. Dogs are smart like that. I saw a video on the internet where a woman was raising monkeys, and she has the monkeys like stand in a line that they were in a drill. And as she was putting clothes on them, and even when she was feeding the monkeys, they never retaliated. They were so disciplined. And it made me wonder whether it was discipline or just conditioning. And I'm leaning towards the latter. Maybe she had conditioned them to stay in place, do as you are told, or else. There was always that or else. And I think that's the way our sheep are. You follow the straight line or else. You never step out of the line because you are afraid of that or else. Today, my friends, is the day when we are no longer afraid of that or else. Because whatever that or else is, it is not going to stop us from finding our true destiny. I don't know about you all, but I've fallen in love with this book, and this book shall remain in my pocketbook. I want to say thanks to the person who bought this book. You know, somebody bought this book and sent it to me, and they said, "Child, you have got to read this book." And I sincerely appreciate it because this book has so many lessons in it. It will take you from point A to point B without you even realizing it. So let us continue reading The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The heart is afraid that it will have to suffer, the boy told the alchemist one night as they looked up at the moonless sky. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams, because every second of the search is a second's encounter with God and with eternity. Every second of the search is an encounter with God. When I had been truly searching for my treasure, every day has been luminous because I've known that every hour was a part of the dream that I would find it. When I have been truly searching for my treasure, I've discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not had the courage to try things that seemed impossible for a shepherd to achieve. So his heart was quiet for an entire afternoon. That night, the boy slept deeply, and when he awoke, his heart began to tell him things that came from the soul of the world. It said that all people who are happy have God within them, and that happiness could be found in a grain of sand from the desert, as the alchemist had said, because a grain of sand is a moment of creation, and the universe has taken millions of years to create it. Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him, his heart said. We, people's hearts, seldom say much about those treasures because people no longer want to go in search of them. We speak of them only to children. Later, we simply let life proceed in its own direction towards its own fate. But unfortunately, very few follow the path laid out for them, the path to their destinies and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out indeed to be a threatening place. So we, their hearts, speak more and more softly. We never stop speaking out, but we begin to hope that our words won't be heard. We don't want people to suffer because they don't follow their hearts. Why don't people's hearts tell them to continue to follow their dreams? The boy asked the alchemist. Because that's what makes a heart suffer most. The hearts don't like to suffer. From then on, the boy understood his heart. He asked it, please, never to stop speaking to him. He asked that when he wandered from his dreams. His heart pressed him and sounded the alarm. The boy swore that every time he heard the alarm, he would heed its message. That night, he told all of this to the alchemist, and the alchemist understood that the boy's heart had returned to the soul of the world. So what should I do now? The boy asked. Continue in the direction of the pyramids, said the alchemist, and continue to pay heed to the omens. Your heart is still capable of showing you where the treasure is. Is that the one thing I still need to know? No, the alchemist answered. What you still need to know is this. Before a dream is realized, the soul of the world tests everything that was learnt along the way. It does this not because it is evil, but so that we can, in addition to realizing our dreams, master the lessons we have learned as we have moved towards the dream. That's the point at which most people give up. It's the point at which, as we say in the language of the desert, one dies of thirst just when the palm trees have appeared on the horizon. Every search begins with beginner's luck, and every search ends with the victors being Being severely tested, the boy remembered an old proverb from his country. It said that the darkest hour of the night comes just before the dawn. You get that, guys? The darkest hour of the night comes just before the dawn. So just before your success usually comes the hardest lap of your race. Never give up. That is the lesson here. Do not give up. Yes, Lori, this book is one of the best books I've read so far. And my eyes are always in a book, but this book, I absolutely love it. And I will be reading this book again and again and again and again. And I'm taking notes of all the lessons that are in the book so that I can use them in my own life. Because these lessons in this book are really life-changing. And before I even read any further, I'm going to read you what Madonna says about this book. Madonna says, a beautiful book about magic, dreams, and the treasures we seek elsewhere and then find it at our own doorsteps. That's what Madonna says about this book. The New York Times says his books have had a life-enhancing impact on millions of people. And that is the truth right there. Because I just joined that throng of people who have found this book to be quite life-enhancing and impactful. Let us read. Oh, it's 5:30. Oh, I gotta go to work, guys. Almost forgot that I gotta go to work. But even so, I have enough time to read one more chapter. So I don't want to leave you all high and dry. I don't want to be like a treacherous camel who just falls down and die without any warning. We're going to do like the horse. We're going to go bit by bit and give our warnings. All right. So now we're going to read the last chapter of the day. On the following day, the first clear sign of danger appeared. 3 armed tribesmen approached and asked what the boy and the alchemist were doing there. I'm hunting with a falcon, the alchemist answered. We're going to have to search you to see whether you are armed, one of the tribesmen said. The alchemist dismounted slowly, and the boy did the same. Why are you carrying money? Asked the tribesman when he had searched the boy's bag. I need it to get to the pyramids, he said. The tribesman who was searching the alchemist's belongings found a small crystal flask filled with a liquid and a yellow glass egg that was slightly larger than a chicken's egg. What are these things? He asked. That's the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life. It's the masterwork of the alchemist. Whoever swallows that elixir will never be sick again, and a fragment from that stone turns any metal into gold. The Arabs laughed at him, and the alchemist laughed along. They thought his answers was amusing, and they allowed the boy and the alchemist to proceed with all of their belongings. Are you crazy? The boy asked the alchemist when they had moved on. What did you do that for? To show you one of life's simple lessons, the alchemist answers. When you possess great treasures within you and try to tell others of them, seldom do they believe you. They continue across the desert. With every day that passed, the boy's heart became more and more silent. It no longer wanted to know about things of the past or future. It was content simply to contemplate the desert and to drink with the boy from the soul of the world. The boy and his heart had become friends, and neither was capable now of betraying the other. When his heart spoke to him, it was to provide a stimulus to the boy and to give him strength, because the days of silence there in the desert were wearisome. His heart told the boy, what his strongest qualities were: his courage in having given up his sleep and in trying to live out his destiny, and his enthusiasm during the time he had worked at the crystal shop. And his heart told him something else that the boy had never noticed. It told the boy of dangers that had threatened him, but that he had never perceived. His heart said that one time it had hidden the rifle the boy had taken from his father, because of the possibility that the boy might wound himself. And it reminded the boy of the day when he had been ill and vomiting out in the fields, after which he had fallen into a deep sleep. There had been two thieves farther ahead who were planning to steal the boy's sheep and murder him. But since the boy hadn't passed by, they had decided to move on, thinking that he had changed his route. Does a man's heart always help him? The boy asked the alchemist. Mostly just the hearts of those who are trying to realize their destinies, but they do help children, drunkards, and the elderly too. Does that mean that I'll never run into danger? It means only that the heart does what it can, the alchemist said. One afternoon, they passed by the encampment of one of the tribes. At each corner of the camp were Arabs garbed in beautiful white robes with arms at the ready. The men were smoking their hookahs and trading stories from the battlefield. No one paid any attention to the two travelers. "There's no danger," the boy said, when they had moved on past the encampment. The alchemist sounded angry. "Trust in your heart, but never forget that you are in the desert. When men are at war with one another, the soul of the world can hear the screams of battle. No one fails to suffer the consequences of everything under the sun." All things are one, the boy thought. And then, as the desert wanted to demonstrate that the alchemist was right, two horsemen appeared from behind the travelers. "You can't go any further," one of them said. "You are in the area where the tribes are at war." "I'm not going very far," the alchemist answered, looking straight into the eyes of the horsemen. They were silent for a moment, and then agreed that the boy and the alchemist could move along. The boy watched the exchange with fascination. "You dominated those horsemen with the way you looked at them," he said. "Your eyes show the strength of your soul," answered the alchemist. That's true, the boy thought. He had noticed that in the midst of the multitude of armed men back at the encampment, there had been one who stared fixedly at the two. He had been so far away that his face wasn't even visible, but the boy was certain that he had been looking at them. Finally, when they had crossed the mountain range that extended along the entire horizon, the alchemist said that they were only 2 days from the pyramids. I can't with you, Cad. Cad, so well, the groundhog has finally raised its head. Yes, I have. I finally. Oh my God, God, this sentence here is for you, my sister. Your eyes show the strength of your soul. Oh my, I gotta read that part again, guys. Your eyes show the strength of your soul, answered the alchemist. That's true, the boy thought. He had noticed that in the midst of the multitude of armed men back at the encampment, there had been one who stared fixedly at the two. He had been so far away that his face wasn't even visible, but the boy was certain that he had been looking at them. Finally, when they had crossed the mountain range that extended along the entire horizon, the alchemist said that they were only 2 days from the pyramids. If we're going to go our separate ways soon, the boy said, then teach me about alchemy. You already know about alchemy. It is about penetrating the soul of the world and discovering the treasure that had been reserved for you. No, that's not what I mean. I'm talking about transforming lead into gold. The alchemist fell as silent as the desert and answered the boy only after they had stopped to eat. Everything in the universe evolved, he said, and for wise men, gold is the metal that evolved the furthest. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. I just know that the tradition is always right. Men have never understood the words of the wise. So gold, instead of being seen as a symbol of evolution, becomes the basis for conflict. There are many languages spoken by things, the boy said. There was a time, there was a time when, for me, a camel's whining was nothing more than whining. Then it became a signal of danger. And finally, it became just a whining again. But then he stopped. The alchemist probably already knew all that. I have known true alchemists, the alchemist continued. They locked themselves in their laboratories and tried to evolve as gold had. And they found the philosopher's stone because they understand that when something evolves, everything around that thing evolves as well. Others stumbled upon the stone by accident. They already had the gift, and their souls were readier for such things than the souls of others. But that don't count. They are quite rare. And then there were the others who were interested only in gold. They never found the secret. They forgot that lead, copper, and iron have their own destinies to fulfill. And anyone who interferes with the destiny of another thing never will discover his own. The alchemist's words echoed out like a curse. He reached over and picked up a shell from the ground. This desert was once a sea, he said. I noticed that, the boy answered. The alchemist told the boy to place the shell over his ear. He had done that many times when he was a child and had heard the sound of the sea. The sea had lived on the shell. The sea had lived on in the shell because that's its destiny, and it will never cease doing so until the desert is once again covered with water. They mounted their horses and rode out in the direction of the pyramids of Egypt. Guys, I remember this little poem as I read this about the seashell. I remember this poem I learned in the first grade about the seashell. And it goes like this. See this shell, hold it up to your ear, be very quiet, then tell me what you hear. You can hear the ocean. It rumbles and roars. Yes, it was the seashell that was washed ashore. I remember saying that poem since the first grade. Like, what? Wow, guys. This book is rather interesting. The seashell, just as the seashell continues the story of the ocean will one day come back to cover the sand where the seashell lies. Guys, that is going to be the end of this reading for today. When we come back tomorrow, we will read some more of The Alchemist. I don't know, tomorrow might be the end of it. Yeah, tomorrow we might just finish reading it. I hope you all enjoy the reading of this book as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. But more so, I hope you all understand the lessons in this book. Do not be as treacherous as a camel. A camel is a very treacherous animal because a camel will go and go and go and go and go and make you believe that its energy is never ending. And then suddenly it will just fall down and die. Be like the horse, one step at a time, but always moving towards your destiny. The horse, he walks a little, he tires, he stops, he rests. He walks some more, he tires a little, he stops, he rests. He walks some more, he tires a little, he stops, he rests. And that way, he gets more out of the journey than that camel. Guys, get up today and do whatever it is that you must do. Do it one day at a time. That's going to be it from me for today, my friends. Until next time, when I continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. Have yourselves a great evening, guys. See you all tomorrow morning.